Do we actually? Yeah. Okay. So this is Senate Appropriations, and we have just had referred to us S56, which has come to us from the Finance Committee that has identified the revenue source to support the expansion of child care subsidies in terms of the amount paid as well as the eligible households. There's also a provision to provide benefit to a parent for because there are circumstances where in fact the choice could be a parent could provide care versus making a payment to a child care provider. So that nexus is there. The bill also provides, and a lot of it is referencing back, the bill as originally introduced and came out of Health and Welfare has a proposed reorganization of a Department of Children and Families. So there are a variety of connections here as it relates to the budget. I think I don't know if the report of the bill is going to be coming in, but who can give us the best walkthrough of the bill? At this point, is it in terms of the money? Is it Nolan? Or Stephanie has worked a lot on the money. Obviously, what we're doing is bringing up the child care household eligibility threshold to 600%. And the reason for doing that, for family of four, that's 180,000. The reason for doing that is as we're putting in much higher payments for child care providers, the more we have to build the slope at the higher end. It's sort of like income sensitivity for property taxes, where a dollar more, you're out, a dollar in, you're out. So you're eligible. So it's a way of sloping down the benefit, but then you have to have a broader income band to make that slope work. So the committee in Health and Welfare looked at what would be a new level of reimbursement, and we're talking about our young children, our youngest infant through age 5, is it, Ginny, or through age 5? And we all know from community meetings that the number of child care providers has declined. So we have a capacity issue. We have a workforce issue. Senator Starr and I were talking about a wonderful child care center up in, was it Newport or North Troy? And couldn't make it work financially. Simply because of the level of reimbursement. So this bill does a lot to move the level of reimbursement up to toward the market rate, 100% of the current market rate. The other thing we need to look at is a lot of the stuff that we have put in as sort of compensatory over the pandemic to address what is the fundamental problem of not having adequate rates gets really subsumed, because you aren't going to be paying millions of dollars more for increased rates and not have a beneficial impact on your ability to retain staff, because obviously the level of salary it makes a big determining factor of where you want to work or whether the local school system looks more attractive financially. So we have a variety of things that are attempted to be addressed in this bill. And then there is a proposed reorganization, and we'll be taking some testimony on what that would entail. And we're going to probably, in the end, make some financial adjustments, because one of the things, and Stephanie and I have been working on it, she's been working with the other committee, and that is, we want to build capacity. I don't know how many times Senator Westman said, we got to address the adequacy and the capacity of the current provider system, and we've lost providers. And so we need to have some grants to help programs get either expand or to get set up, so that that upfront financing has got to be part of it in order to deal with not only stabilizing the workforce, making a more adequate level of assistance to our working families, but also making sure that we are not forgetting that we've got to, just like with nursing and so many other areas, we've got to build more capacity. And certainly very young children is a problem. And for infants, it is a real problem, and centers as a practice don't take infants under 6 weeks. So there's kind of piecing together, or parents have to financially, if they can afford to, piece together something on the influence. So infant care is really important, but an area, a critical area of capacity. So with that, now with that said, as our pro tem would say,
It's time to go to work.
the time to go to work is here. And Shayla, are you ready to go to work?
I'm ready to go to work.
All right. So obviously what we have here is a bill that has tremendous implications, and I thought of another option. I wanted to mention it to you later on in terms of another option around contracting. Boy, I never stop thinking, you know, don't you know that? I know, I'm gonna give you you're gonna have migraines. I'm gonna pass them on to you. So if you would, if you wanted to give us the agency's response, and of course we have the chair of health and welfare here, and so she's been part of this process from day one. The reporter of the bill may come in at some point, but is already next door on her dispatch bill. You wanted to make some additional comments, Jenny?
No, I think that the work that we did over the summer and the fall to put the bill together and then to identify some really key decision-making points so that we could enhance childcare providers, workers, looking at how we pay for our childcare at the state, and then also families. And as you were saying, Senator, the increasing capacity is key. So as you increase the amount of money that's going into the centers, you might increase their ability to expand. And at the same time, as you increase the reimbursement or the subsidy, CCPAP, for families up to 600%, then you're also suggesting to folks who have a higher income that they may want to actually put their kids in childcare. So you're increasing demand and so expanding access, which is what we have heard from the economic sector, from businesses, about how critically important this all is. So I haven't yet seen what finance has given us, but it would be great to hear what.
Well, I think what finance did and voted out was to use a payroll tax.
Oh.
And it would be split 75% employer, 25% employee. I think it's quite modest because what they were talking about is obviously the governor's budget and what we already have in the base for childcare. And the governor's budget had quite a slug of money, 56 million. And then redirecting, rather than one of the arguments for the child tax credit was the cost that families have for care of their children, and redirecting it as part of this financing package. So in the end, I think the amount of revenue on an annual basis net of those other funding streams.
There are some, as Sheila is speaking to the bill, you'll probably be speaking to the level of funding for all centers, but then some bonus payment for those who are at a higher quality level or who improve to a new level. So that's all part of the appropriations process. And then as well, additional funding for little ones, the baby bump, so little ones from 0 to 2, where there's a slightly greater reimbursement.
Because of the staffing ratio.
Just because the staffing ratio for little ones is 4 to 1 as compared to 10 to 1 for the older kids. So there's a difference in need there in terms of reimbursement.
And the parental leave is.
And the parental leave
And the
is,
parental leave is what Senator Kitchen was talking about.
so,
Before we get into the other details, do we know what the value of the childcare subsidy would be for the, like, an average family, that even up to the new income level? Is there a dollar number that we?
sure.
We had one, I don't know whether it's been modified in finance at all.
So I don't think that's been modified, but it's a scale. So the value of the payment to the provider is bumped up significantly, but
What is that?
depending on, it would,
Are you asking about how much does it cost per child?
What's the dollar difference that, like, that family would be getting? Well, with the new.
Depending on their income.
Depending on their income, obviously, but just like, what's the scale, what's the average, what's the round number?
So currently it costs $17,400 per child.
That's the
The
max.
RAND report said $28,000. And then joint fiscal has helped us understand something in the middle that is probably more reasonable for what we can
but
afford.
a higher income family would pay more of the share.
Yeah.
They would have a higher family share than a lower income, and that's a
Well,
staircase.
let me be more specific. So if a family that's getting the tax credit this year is losing $1,000, what would be what they might be gaining on the childcare part? Is that a number that's calculable?
Take quite a bit to cost them $1,000.
No, it is something we can provide for you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There is
That's
there's a chart I can give to you to show you.
but the combining the tax credit piece is something we can do.
Okay, thanks.
But obviously, the level of subsidy that's provided to families varies from 100%.
Yeah.
Right up to sloping out.
And at the same time, they're increasing the pay, so the cost is going up at the same time.
Yeah.
So, yes, Senator Starr.
Yeah, I was just wondering, not the whole idea, but part of the idea behind this whole program is to try to attract more spouses, one or the other, to the workforce. And I was wondering if there was any projected numbers on, would we gain 100 more workers? or-
Oh, yes, the RAND study actually estimated that it was somewhere, it was kind of a big range, but it was 600 to 2,800 more workers would enter.
Now, that's very important for the.
If I remember
businesses
correctly
that
from reading the
need-
report.
Yeah, you're
I'm right, okay. Senator Westford.
So when they came and did the presentation, they asked the question about how much time it would take to get to 2,800, or not 2,800 workers, but how much time it would take to get a full complement of people doing childcare, so we could increase from the 45% of the kids now to where we need to go, which is probably 75%, because about 25% are taken care of by their parents right now. Have we done any estimates on how fast we think people will come into the workforce?
So we have estimates in terms of costing out the CCFAP program and the enrollment we expect to increase in that. The question of the timing of that is a question of capacity in the fields. This has a start date of January 1st, 2024, and fully annualized by the end of FY '25. We have caseload estimates, how that translates into, we don't have and on the other side, that translates into this many new workers by the end of FY '25. We don't, the best we have is that range from RAND, and given that the value here is in the midpoint, it's probably at the lower half of that estimate range, I would imagine. But
We do have estimates also in the number of children.
yes, that's what we do to cost out the program, but turning that into an estimate of workers is not, that's not a direct link necessarily.
I
It's hard to know how the market or how that workplace is gonna respond.
I understand, my inclination is I want to support it, I want to add in all of it. My worry is we're gonna raise all this money, and if for infants, right now, we're only providing placement for about 45% of the kids. If I fairly quickly can't raise that number, and we've raised a whole bunch of money to go into that, that concerns me a great deal, because there's going to be parents that are going to be upset soon. You just put all this money in and I still can't find a placement. And some of that is going to be hard because it is a chicken and the egg thing. We have to raise wages to get people in, but yet we're in terrible competition with other fields now to get people to go in.
Well, the one thing that's optimistic is we've got a good pipeline of people that want to go into early childhood education. So it's not, a matter of not having the interest. It's just making it financially feasible.
So
To
it will
go
offer
into the world.
stability. It will
And-
offer-
Well,
yes.
But
We do have, 5,000 people out there working now in registered in-home,
I don't know the number of.
you're talking about the number
Part of
of,
the kids.
you're talking about the number of families participating in
no, the
CPAC?
number of
Childcare.
working in
Childcare.
childcare workers.
I don't know how large the workforce is.
And do we have to double that?
It's probably going to happen more organically, say that. It will, because as you invest, you're going to see people coming into the field, you're going to see people, it's an organic farm. And,
Bobby likes organic.
you will, you'll see people coming in and you'll also see more demand.
6.9.
This is all we hear about, but all we have heard about since last year is we need childcare. So this is an ability to respond to that. And the Rander's work is pretty significant in influencing us in our thinking.
But the other thing that I want to point out is recognizing the very issue that Senator Westman is raising. In order to build capacity, we've got to put some resources out there to support it.
Yes.
And how you provide the necessary support. And that is usually in the form of cash, because it might be that you've got to do some capital improvements, or you've got to outfit, a center, or something like that, or, whatever that might look like. That could vary depending on whether you're talking about expansion or whether you're talking about a new startup. So that's why it's got to be done kind of in a multi-faceted way, I think, as you're pointing out.
Yes.
It can't be just, you can't just say, here's the, we're going to just deal with the wages if we don't deal with how we can support the growth and the creation of more centers.
I pushed for years to try to start programs in the tech centers myself, and I'm trying to get,
Well, don't give up. You must feel like Sisyphus.
I'm just saying that I know that the most frustrating thing for young parents is not being able to find placements. And I hear that as much in my community as I hear from people that say our wages are too low.
So there's that interdependency here. So you push one place and whatever. So that's why hopefully we've tried to look at it, in a total way. Other questions before we turn the podium over to Sheila Livingston, who is.
I just hope that as we move forward with that, we have state colleges located in 4 of our communities with empty spaces. And I know in Newport, we have a wonderful daycare center, but their maximum numbers of the size of their building, and building space is gonna be critical, so if we have any vacant municipal, county, or state spaces that could be utilized for this, whoever.
Well,
the
Senator
committee
Chittin
is.
brought up, the extent to which in some areas we have surplus classroom in
Yeah.
schools as our population of school kids has declined. There's some limitations on that, but I mean, obviously you have to have smaller furniture and, those kinds of.
Retrofit a little bit.
Yeah, you have to do some retrofit, but absolutely, that is a logical place, and if communities are really interested, and I'll tell you, the little town of Peachum put a wonderful childcare center in their church, and they had to retrofit, and they had to create
Yeah,
a
that's a
playground.
great idea.
And, but that's an example of taking an underutilized area of space.
I did that for our church back in the early 80s. Did a business
I did as
plan
well.
and established a childcare center. That is still going. And all the retrofit and eventually the buildings, and great.
So I think we've had a lot of discussion about what this bill does. There's been a lot of advocacy for childcare. And I think, the Senate has come out of the gate this year saying this is, and that's why we had the RAND study to do some of that preliminary analysis that the bill is building on. Other questions or comments before we move to having testimony from the Agency of Human Services, which ultimately, this is a bill that's going to come right to their doorstep. So welcome, Shayla, again. And let's get started.
Great. Hi, everybody. I'm Shayla Livingston. I'm the policy director for the Agency of Human
Has your
Services.
partner deserted you?
I'm not sure. Janet McLaughlin is the new deputy commissioner for the for CDD and the Department for Children and Families. And between the two of us, she has lots of experience in early childcare, but she's brand new to the agency, and I've
Oh, well,
been
welcome.
here, so we can hopefully do this together. And Tara, I don't know if it would be okay for Janet to start and give just an overview. And then I have a couple of pieces I just want to
Overview of the bill or the policy?
the proposal that's on the table now. Yep.
Well, we'll turn it over to you, Janet, but you're muted.
All right, thank you. It's so nice to get a chance to connect with you. I apologize, I can't be there in person today. Janet McLaughlin, and I'm the new Deputy Commissioner at the Department of Children and Families, overseeing the Child Development Division. And I loved the conversation that I was just hearing from all of you in terms of trying to think really creatively and comprehensively about how we're meeting the needs of young children and their families in the state of Vermont. I did want to spend a few minutes just offering the administration's perspective on sort of the current version of the bill, as was discussed as came out of Senate Health and Welfare, and then has been refined some in the conversations in Senate Finance. So I want to just emphasize that we are aligned on the need to support Vermont's childcare system, and that families, programs, and workers, all need additional support and resources. We're grateful that many of the priorities and specifics that were in the governor's budget were used, are included in the current version. The bill that passed out of Senate Health and Welfare focuses on the Child Care Financial Assistance Program expansion, and that is aligned with our proposal to begin to increase eligibility and to provide a more equitable payment structure for the within CCFAP. We do want to emphasize, we are concerned about the combined cost of.
We know that. We know you have to say that.
Great.
We understand it.
Okay, perfect. But so there were four elements of it as it was passed out of Sutton Health Welfare. There was the removal of training and work requirements. There was the move to enrollment-based payments, the increase to 600% FPL, and the significant increase in reimbursement rates. So and we want to emphasize that each of those changes does have implications for the CDD information system and its users. So that's both the eligibility specialists as well as the childcare programs that have to use that system. And so it will take time though to scope and develop and implement any of the changes that are put forward. And it will be tricky to make them all at once. So just keeping that in mind as you guys are thinking about the dates associated with implementation. We do appreciate the proposed shift to readiness grants. That was in the recent JFO estimate because we know that childcare programs do need the flexible supports. And we think we have a framework from what was done with the ARPA stabilization funds to begin that work. We also really appreciate the administrative funding that's included. The Senate bill, right now, it more than doubles the current funds that CDD manages. And obviously we need resources to be able to do that work well, including staff. I would say the governor's proposal included 6 additional positions. And it was only 1/4 of the size of the current version of S56. So as we think about, just want to emphasize, we want to do a great job and we need to have enough, we need to have the people and the time to be able to do that. And then finally, in terms of parental leave, we do want to just emphasize the need for flexibility in the administration of that program, including the option for a third-party vendor. We would, even if we did use a third-party vendor, we'd still need support. But especially with so much action, so many changes coming, we feel like we probably will need external options on that. So those were the sort of high-level thoughts I wanted to share, and I can turn it over to Shayla for what she wants to add.
Any questions, Janet? Yes.
I don't have a question, but I just wanted to note that I see it very much as you do, that we're working along similar lines with the governor. And I think he's made it clear that he plans to do work in this space. And so we see this as acting in concert with that impulse, and hopefully we can continue to work together on down the line. He's talked about childcare ever since he got into office, and I believe he means to make it happen. So I'm very, very encouraged to hear what you said.
Other comments or questions? So I guess the table's yours.
Yeah. So the last piece that I wanted to talk about was the reorganization of the Department for Children and Families. We spoke a little bit about this in Senate Health and Welfare, given the scope and the size of the changes. And I'm not sure if this committee has been able to meet our new commissioner, but we do have now new commissioner.
Well, we've met
Chris
in a former
in a former capacity. That's right. We are very excited to have him with us. Janet is obviously also brand new, and those leadership changes coupled with the amount of work that this potentially means for the department, I want to emphasize that we don't support at this time the reorganization. At the same time, I think that would be a really big lift, even if it was the following year. I'm sure you all know this, but whenever we talk about reorganization in the legislature, that is a large cause of stress for staff. So even just the conversations can be really tough to hear. And then the reality of that is not only incredibly expensive in this case, but it would be tough to do that and implement the amount of work that this bill would entail. So I would respectfully ask the committee consider that and consider maybe tabling that for now, as that is gonna again be another added price tag that doesn't go directly to families at this juncture or providers, and needs a lot more work for that department that's had a lot of change and a lot of stress at this point.
Yes.
Was that your testimony in health and welfare, or is it changed at all?
It is, yes, and I mean the scope and size and how the moving parts are continuing to inform that. I'm not we're not gonna sit here and say we fundamentally disagree that there's never a reason to look at an organization of a department. That's not what I'm saying, but at this juncture, the timing of the workload and the situation at Academy.
Oh, it's the old saying, you've got your hands full and your pants to hold out.
We sure do.
And
And babies.
And all those people at the top doing it.
So, yes, Andy.
Just to clarify on that part, are you opposed to for the reorganization or doing the reorganization now, both?
At this point, I would say both, just because I do not want to leave it as a hanger out
Yeah.
there. I think we want to make sure that the department is responsive to the needs of the community. That is the purpose. And so very open to that continued conversation, which we have had with the chair about what that means and to say, who needs to access them and when and how. But
So
no.
let me ask you then, point blank. Are you basically telling us that with all the work associated with getting the childcare system stabilized and what's in the bill, to do that and layer on a reorg at the same time could jeopardize?
It would jeopardize. I can say it would, and not it could, it would
It would
jeopardize.
jeopardize the ability to successfully implement any
Correct.
of these.
Yes, sure.
All right.
And we did discuss that, and certainly the least that we could do would be, we had talked about transition language or having some date out, but it would.
Well,
I guess I'm agreeing.
I can speak somewhat as someone who's had experience with that. And it's not just adding a position, but when you're creating a new entity, you have to deal with, what do you have for policy? A lot of stuff gets integrated in one department, and you have a business office, you have fiscal, you have your policy, you have a whole host of administrative functions that have to be divvied up. And sometimes there's some economy of scale combined. And then if you have to have two business managers, all of that needs to be carefully looked at, because our concern right now is what we've heard is a lot of the money that's currently out there, simply because of the overwhelming workload, has gone out much more slowly than any of us ever wanted. We're hearing from our youth service bureaus that the money they need to do their jobs, the RFPs are taking longer, and the money going out to those agencies or programs is, maybe 6 or 8 months into the year and hasn't gone out. So it is certainly a desire. The more you expand the scope, and I already have a prejudice against this, that, in terms of when you try to do too much under one person, it's hard to really give the leadership and attention that's necessary, particularly if you've got a new, fairly sizable initiative or whatever. So that, I guess then we should take your testimony to say that your priority would be to make sure the program designed to serve Vermonters gets a successful implementation, and that would be significantly compromised to try to do more than that at this time.
It would be.
Center lines.
Yeah, I just wanted to underscore that the recommendation for reorganization was really started last year when we asked for a report. The report came in over the summer and suggested that there should be one single leader between AOE and AHS, so that, but the difficulty, that's a discussion in and of itself. And so the recommendations that are in the bill are different from the report. And as Sheila has indicated, we did talk about the competition between doing reorganization and actually advancing childcare. So it's a significant conflict.
I think from the general public, what they're hearing for priority, they would want to see us make progress on the childcare front. What appears behind the scenes would not be where they would want the.
Where do you want the focus? Yeah.
Senator Westman.
Well, from the, and I can speak from the Senate point of view, we have had positions at least twice that I can remember initiated by the chair of this committee to reorganize in all of human services. And I think that at some point we'll want to move ahead. I think that, but it goes well beyond DCF in what might be considered, and that will be a future conversation. And I suspect that will continue. But, you know, I think what you're hearing is a lot of agreement around the table. We get where you are and what you are, but it isn't just DCF.
I will hone my debate skills for that conversation.
I may not give up.
Actually, for me to hone.
Actually, I was looking in my Senate desk and I actually have the whole bill and stuff. And Jeanette White was chair of GovOps.
I remember.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
passed it unanimously. So I don't throw anything away. And I actually,
Was that 5 years ago?
well, the one upstairs
Stephanie,
is.
do you have that?
We did once.
Yeah, we did it twice.
It was pretty recent.
No, it was more recent.
More recent.
The first one was 2007.
Yeah.
So, and we've only managed to expand the scope and complexity and workload.
Well, then it's probably 3 times because I gave you 11.
It was back when Robin Lunch was with Ledge Council.
That's right.
It's so long ago.
That was 2
Yeah.
years.
So, Shayla, what else do you want to say? You know that the parental leave is designed to be very simple. And obviously you can make it much more complex, but as we were looking at the level of reimbursement that would go out now through the CFAP program, I think it was Senator Starr said, well, wouldn't it be just as cheap to pay the parent? Maybe I'm misquoting you, but
No, that was-
I think you said it would be cheaper.
it'd be
Yeah, she did
cheaper.
say that.
Just
So-
pay one of the spouses.
so it's,
It's a cheapskate.
it raised that policy question about, if you're gonna, you wanna have that parent have a choice, because if you can, which within that very much elevated reimbursement, so you might wanna, may give that parent the option of providing care as opposed to having to pay for the care through the CFAP program. That has been a topic of great criticism, I know. But the proposal is made all within the context of childcare. The nexus is childcare, allowing that parent during that period of time to have the option of providing care as opposed to making a childcare subsidy payment. And it's obviously very limited, and it's all within that connection interplay between eligible families for childcare and eligible families for this leave option, which some may not take or not, but that's, and we've tried to recognize, obviously, what it will take for resources to be somewhat, not only on the administrative side, but on the capacity building side as well. And we'll get into the details of what that proposed money would look like to support that. What else would you like?
And I
to-
think that's the one of the big things that Janet said, I just want to underscore for folks, is the importance of feasibility and having the expectations be realistic so that we are meeting your expectations, because as the chair said, that has been an issue with all the federal money that has come through COVID and this department. So we are looking at the capacity grants now in terms of the ability to implement them. It would obviously be a big lift, but we don't have any huge red scary implementation flags to throw you, so that's great on first review. We did really appreciate Senate Health and Welfare taking the quality piece out of the CCFAP payments themselves to enhance equity. That was something that was very important to us. And again, focusing that quality payment on in a simplistic and again, not to oversimplify quality because it's very important and complicated, but to make that mechanism straightforward so that gets out the door in a timely manner as well. So we do appreciate all the committees attended to making the dates and the money and the administration work so that we don't come back to you and have me sit in this chair next year and say, oh, really sorry. We haven't even started that, whatever, because we don't have the staff capacity to it. I don't want to be in that position for Vermont families, taxpayers, and for you all.
So let me ask mechanically, do you have dedicated eligibility workers for childcare, or is it integrated with other benefit determinations?
Can I pass that to you, Janet?
Yes, yes, we have eligibility specialists, childcare eligibility specialists that we implement through contracts out in each of the regions.
Okay. So we would, that really, so I believe then you've got community-based organizations that are the connecting point. I think it might have been Umbrella and St. Johnsbury, for example. So that helps because you're looking across that collective network of staff. Okay, thank you. I wasn't sure because
yeah, and the budget does include money. The budget does include additional grant funds because with expanding eligibility, obviously we would need more eligibility specialists. So.
All right, now for
yeah, I was just wondering with the payment for the whatever time is set, I think it's 12 weeks.
12 weeks is a protected period in law.
What is the proper age or the suggested age that infants should go to a facility, a daycare facility? Is it, 10 weeks, 12 weeks?
They won't take them younger than 6.
6 weeks. That's the earliest.
No, Janet, if you have an
I don't know if
answer
it's
to that.
recommended that they come in. That's the minimum.
Yes.
They'll take them. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, because
Still a little.
Yeah, the minimum is 6 weeks. I do know that, but mostly because I'm a parent, not because I'm civilized.
well, that just seems.
That's why the 12 weeks is gives some time for
Well,
after.
yeah, I mean,
And
I wanted to stay home longer. I was only home a half a year, but to really bond with my son, I felt cheated.
that's why he works for you even now. You've got attachment disorder.
Can't let you go.
Never got bonded. well.
No, I think I think there's clinical label for that. Yeah.
I don't know that we want to use the star clan.
The star model.
Yeah, the Starbucks. Oh, no, it's gonna get very confusing. Yeah.
So what we have before us then is a recommended level to move the subsidy. And there's a price tag, and Stephanie can go through the numbers and what that means, as well as some of the other funding considerations like the readiness grants and so forth, what that looks like. And that work had to be done in order for the finance committee to really figure out what the revenues would be necessary to support the proposed policy changes that came out of the Health and Welfare Department. So, Health and Welfare Department, helping.
We just got promoted.
Yeah. We just reorganized you, Jenny.
I'll send you your new work.
Yeah.
Something else? And you look like you're ready to make a swift exit.
Trying.
Janet, anything else you'd like to offer?
No, thank you very much.
Okay. Andy, another
Well, I have
question?
a JFO question, so they're gonna go over the.
Who wants to go over the
I
numbers?
can go over the one page on numbers.
Oh, that would be good.
And, Joyce is not here, but we also have charts that I think might be helpful.
I watched this. She might be watching.
Pieces of this.
We have choices.
This is always on.
I know.
It was always,
Yes.
it never quite made the top. So it was always pushing that boulder.
I'd rather be him than Tampa,
Just this one.
you know? I mean, at least he's He's out in the fresh air pushing
I
around.
know,
Right. It's got a purpose.
Yeah.
yeah. Another day, another mountain.
Yeah.
What is it, the same hill?
Yes.
The same
Your
mountain.
sister toast you. You should get a framed picture of Henry pushing a boulder up the rock.
I discovered why I had cats
Yeah.
all over me. But
That was a neat card.
Henry brushes up against
Because he was gonna have
my
to deal with Bumba.
Henry's so starved for attention.
Yeah, humbugs.
Mama.
No, I always feel like you bring a kitten home or puppy home with the other, leave them alone for a couple of hours, they work it out.
Joyce letting you watch these, she tried these charts. Adrian, is Joyce on? Joyce is there.
All right, welcome, Stephanie.
We're just printing, they came out.
Welcome to- from the other side of the room.
Came a long way.
Safe journey.
Sure, fine.
Oh,
Yeah.
still warm. Talk about hot off the press.
It's the same thing. Just you uploaded this to the web.
The other day in there.
You can have it
Going
like,
up.
forcing you.
Is there another one of those? One more.
Do you want one?
Oh, she's got more.
One of those.
So you have.
I'm not taking away.
You have two documents. One that looks like this, and one that looks like this.
So which one shall we work from this first?
This is the one we're gonna work on first.
All right, so we'll work from the JFO revised cost estimate, March 21st.
And this is the same document that Joyce worked with in Senate Finance, starting on Tuesday. And so we're giving you some information about what the changes mean in terms of impact and caseload on the left-hand side. And then the cost estimates across 2 years, which were the basis for coming down to what the funding source that is recommended from Senate Finance would be. So as has already been discussed, the bill increases the rate that would be paid to CCFAP providers for the 3 age groups, infant, toddler, and pre-K. It does not increase the payment rate for school-age children. So I just want to be clear on that. And that increases up to an average of, across those three, blended average between home and center-based care across those 3 age groups to $24,000 from what the current total payment average would be, is around $16,000 at the 5-star rate.
So $8,000 increase. When you say school age, that's age 6, so 5 and then.
5 and under.
So this would pay up to.
So is that's a big part of the driving of the cost. Yep. And then the other piece is that the program would expand. Right now, the program is open if you're under 350% of poverty. It would bring that up to 600.
650.
To 600. And it is a scale, it's a stair step. You, depending on what cohort of family income as a percentage of poverty, you pay a larger family share. So a family in the model that we've done at 600% of FPL would be paying $425 per week. Folks under 100, there's a slight impact, an increase at the bottom end in terms of the eligibility. Folks under 185% of poverty would be paying $0. Right now, folks under 150% of poverty are paying $0 per week, so they're getting full benefit. So that's so it's, per child, it's more expensive at the bottom end because the family share is lower. Right now in the program, folks over 150 pay their family share, $2,550, $7,500 a week, and they can be billed by the provider for amounts above what CCFAP pays. So we don't have a clear universe of exactly how much families that are being sort of balance billed are actually paying out of pocket.
So,
But when you increase the payment of the program, you are increasing how much is likely to be billed out in the balance pay arrangement.
the 185 is how many dollars? Because we talk about these percentages, but
And then I got
Depends on how many members in the family.
Right here.
Yep, that's the
Oh, that's a big one.
Yeah.
It's an easy reading.
It's amazing what I have right at these
And
fingertips.
it's, you know, we're
I
typically using,
read that from here.
I know.
family configurations can be anything, but we're typically looking at a family of 4 when we're talking
So
about.
this is 2023, so you're going with that. So
Yeah,
150
185.
this year. You want 185 is right there in the middle, so it's between those.
150,000.
So 50% of poverty.
150.
85% of somewhere is like $43,000.
Actually, for like a family of 4,
In a family of 4,
or it's gonna be in like the low 50s.
52,000.
Annual.
That's their family income.
Mhm, Yeah,
Well, that's one. Anything-
no, that wouldn't.
I've got some going for everybody.
So anyway, we can look at that, but it's right here if you want to look at it.
On the wall.
Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like a good. Our appropriations is the smallest.
Put it up.
What are those called? Cork boards and any.
With the alligator graph.
Right, that's all we have.
With the
Yeah, that was
alligator.
it.
The carcass of the alligator,
that's
the
what I-
compliments of Senator Ash. Yes, the dead alligator graph. So, yes, Andy.
So Stephanie, so I understand this is telling us what the family pays. What is the payment that we are making to make up the difference?
So it depends on the enrolled family's child and the income level of the family. So for a family of 185% FPL and under, on average, the blended rate would be that $24,000. That's what the program would be.
So you would,
Be how much?
you would do,
$24,000 for the child, and then
The
on
family pays nothing.
you do,
Yeah.
you subtract, you do the 425 times 12, subtract that from the 24,000.
Joyce's chart really lays this out.
yeah, we have a
Yeah,
chart
we have
that we can walk you through.
Yeah, she's joining us. She's up there too. If you
Yeah.
want.
But it's all charted out because.
Well, you had
She
a,
will be.
So.
you had a range in here of what the family pays. I was wondering if we had a similar range, but it sounds like the chart does that.
Well, in terms of how many families fall in each income band, is that what you're asking for?
But yeah, I guess just the range. So we have 0 to 425 that the family's paying. What is the range that we're paying?
We're paying on average 24,000. So the family, whatever
Oh, so
that.
it's the same. I thought
You're
those were two
talking
separate
about the per
payments.
week. Okay, I'm
Yeah.
sorry, I was switching to yearly.
So we'd have to convert the 24,000 to weekly.
So,
which is
So they're the same. I was thinking those
2,000.
were two different things.
No. So, say on average it's 2,000, 24 divided by 12 is 2,000 a month. And they would be paying $425 per week.
and so that, the weekly blended average of that 24,000 is a rate of 461. And so so you could compare that 425 at the top end, 461, that is the value to the top end FPL.
Okay.
And then, it's the full 461
Yeah,
average
Joyce,
at
do
the
you
bottom
want
end.
to post it down here?
I figured it out. I was mistaken that there were two
It's just-
separate payments.
It just-
That was my
no.
problem. Yeah,
So-
I get,
And once weekly,
So-
and
yeah,
it's
yeah.
confusing.
It's
So,
weekly.
yeah.
So yes.
I feel it monthly, isn't it?
Joyce is here with charts too, that we can look at later, that will help you look at, what
Yeah.
that looks like.
Um,
Keep going to
And so,
another
Can I
question.
just
Yeah.
ask, does Joyce have a chart of the stuff now, so I can, because what I need to be able to say
Sure.
is, here's the income, here's the increase.
Chart for now compared to the chart after the.
Well, the increase is gonna be the 17.3 up to the 24. That's your increase.
that's the increase in the payment.
That's the increase in the payment. How it will affect families will vary tremendously depending on where they are in that income band. So I don't know. You got
So
that?
if she has a chart with the income bands, they must have, to be able to have a chart for now, what they are with bands. So I could, if somebody calls up and they say, I can say, here's what we do now, and here's where it's at.
I don't know if we can, well, Joyce is shaking her head, so I think we can do that. Because what you want to be able to say is, this is the benefit that you will
cost.
come, yeah.
Well, but if,
But I can see where, what.
But-
sold.
But let me tell you, in terms of, there are a whole new group of families that are coming in that we don't serve now or provide any assistance to, and that's from the 350 up to the 600. So we are expanding the universe of families that can benefit. And obviously, if you're moving reimbursement up, you kind of have to look at that, because if you don't do it, then you would be expecting the family at 351% of poverty to conceivably be paying that $24,000 rate. Unless you're gonna cross subsidize between subsidized children and non-subsidized. But all right, more questions of Stephanie, and we'll get the graph from, so we'll keep.
Do you want me to keep going through the sheet?
Yes, I think so.
So the combination of those, the increased payment and the eligibility expansion together, we're estimating is a caseload of about 12,200 for those infant, toddler, and pre-K kids. Right now, that caseload in it's caseload in the CCFAP program. That caseload ranges from 4,500 to 4,700. So that's what we would expect that we would pick
The
up.
calculation is right there, 7,700 new.
Yeah. Because we are, that caseload is coming in both in the existing 0 to 350 and the 350 to 600. It has an impact on the average cost out, because it's a lower cost with more kids coming in on the top end. But the caseload is not all new to childcare. It is new to the CCFAP system. So some of them are coming in that are outside the childcare system, and some are in the childcare system, but now they are eligible for this to come into the program. So the capacity demand it depends on who's coming in from outside the system versus who is coming into the program in terms of being able to find capacity.
Yeah, I was gonna ask the question in a different way. How many of the 7,700 are in registered and licensed placements now versus people we expect new coming into the system?
We don't have a clear picture of that, and that is part of the readiness grant. We know that some of that is new demand on the system. We don't have a really clear picture of how much of that is new demand on the system. But it's.
Are you leaving us, Shayla?
I was gonna take a phone call,
Oh,
but I texted her my phone number, right?
Yeah, that gets back to my overall question of, in the breakdown that is created between us, how, of what's that gap and what's the growth? And when we get to the full complement of the full cost of all of that, what that is, because.
So I'm gonna switch to the right-hand side of the sheet now.
Okay.
and Joyce said we do have some estimates, the best we can, between
That's all I'm asking.
between the newest into the subsidy program and those children that
Or outside the system, or outside the the registered homes and centers now that are being cared for in some other method. But switching to the right-hand side of the sheet, so the combined cost when it's fully annualized of the expansion and the increase in rates is that $120.6 million that you see out on the far right-hand side of 25, turning on January 1st next year. The budget, this is a this is the fiscal budget sheet, side of the sheet right now, is an additional $45 million on top of what's in this, that's the cost of the expansion. And then we think that they need at least $6 million in additional admin money up front in FY '24. This is the tight timeframe you're having both families that are outside the program, but providers that are serving mostly private pay that are outside the program. They're licensed by CDD, but they're not, they don't have a large clientele of CCFAP. And so both those, the provider side and the eligibility side, have to have resources in order for this to be successful. In terms of CDD being able to manage this change. And then we get to the $25 million, we're going down to the 24 column, is on the provider side, we do think that there needs to be a lot more resources out in order to be able to meet what is going to be increased demand for CCFAP. And the nature and the design of that grant program is not in either amendment from Health and Welfare or
That's something we're
Finance.
recommending.
You try to do that one.
Yeah.
And just going a little bit further down the sheet, we think there needs to be continued quality and capacity grants, even after we do the readiness grants in year one. And we've estimated $20 million on this sheet in terms of sort of a minimum to start with in terms of quality and capacity grants, in addition to the expansion in the program going forward. So that's the CCFAP program estimate there. And do you want us to jump into the lead estimates, or do you want to continue to talk about CCFAP?
Questions?
No.
We've kind of been asking as we're going along. This is putting a price tag on the policies. And so that we're anticipating that we're gonna do some changes simply to put in money for the readiness grants and then recognizing the 20 million, and that would be a kind of an ongoing expenditure.
Should that, the readiness money go in
Going in,
this budget
it would be-
this year?
yeah, and the hope-
Getting ready for next year.
I mean, the expectation you are putting on CDD is that they are able to put out those grants very early in the fiscal year. This is FY '24, it turns on July 1st, that they would be able to put out grants pretty quickly in the first part of the fiscal year. August, September, October, because the new expansion is January 1st. And so they need the capacity to do that. They need to be able to seek the if they need outside help in terms of contracts and technical assistance, and also being able to onboard. So that's between the readiness grants and that big boost in administrative resource. That's a lot that you're putting on them.
For 6 months, that's a big.
You might not get all of it out in 6 months, but you want to be able to have, understanding that some grants are coming out and more are coming, but you want to be able to administer them.
A big lift, to get the money out, get the job done, and be ready in 6 months.
Well, I think that tying back to how much can you manage at one time? And so, yes, the readiness grants are going to be upfront. If we're moving into the expanded eligibility and the higher payments January 1st, because that ties to the revenue. Obviously, have the impact there. We're going to have to do some figuring out how to bridge these expenditures until we get to the revenue generation. But this is where that 25 million would be available from the get-go to really start doing this groundwork with the provider community and encourage new entrants into the provider network. And so there's the combination there in 24. Other questions or show? Andy and then Ginny.
So both the readiness and quality, those are one time.
No, quality and incentive will be ongoing, quality and capacity would be ongoing as well, the readiness is.
20 million a year.
It's a minimum of 20 million, you want probably them to keep up somewhat, and that's, you know, can you maintain and expand infant capacity? Can you bring, you know, if there are underserved areas, can you bring on new, you know, attract new entrants and help them stand up quickly? Can you make sure that the, you know, if the STARS system stays in place, you want people to have an incentive to step up, and you want people to maintain their 5-star.
Are they doing that now? Is that a grant program?
Right now, there's, I don't know if you remember, but there's we pay a differential between a 5-star and a 1-star. That's the,
And then the increase in parental leave, that's just because as people figure out about it, why is it
because that also starts on January 1st.
part of it?
So 25 is the annualized cost. 24 is half because of the January.
14 will be ongoing.
14 would be the ongoing cost of the leave. And you would make this, you're setting up the leave with a $600 a week. Over time, you would be probably adjusting that to reflect.
CPI.
Or, you know, some sort of wage tag, or, you know, how.
So, a quick question.
Well,
So,
go ahead.
oh, I'm
No, go
sorry.
ahead. No,
you're-
your question is more important than what
I'm
I find that
sorry.
hard.
Mine
Seriously.
really isn't important. I just was wondering if a parent could get parental leave and still send the child to daycare, or is it one or the other? Because I could see where if you get 12 weeks parental leave,
Yeah, well, that's gonna be an amendment that we're gonna, I think we're gonna deal with that, because we've heard from a lot, and particularly from employers who are saying it's gonna be a hardship to have somebody out for 12 weeks. But if they could come in for 2 days a week or a day or whatever. So one of the things we can do is accommodate that so that there is childcare for part of the time, but prorate the parental leave benefit.
That they're legally required to have them, 12 weeks now.
That's a
If they can
protected-
afford it.
Yes, yeah, that's a protected period of time in Vermont labor law.
So nobody can afford to take it.
That's right. And so, but there are many people, we were just, one of our joint fiscal employees who's about to have another baby said that, you know, she went back to work well before 12 weeks because of the workload and, you know, and whatever. And came back 2 days a week. And that's not uncommon where people try to combine it. So, so yes, we can address that. Ginny, do you want to
Oh,
comment?
no,
And I'm just looking
glad
at
to
the
see
clock.
Shayla came back in, because my question really was about, one of the things that's in the bill is the policy on enrollment-based versus attendance-based. We're getting our report, yes, but, any administrative savings there? I mean, there will be savings at the childcare area, childcare centers. Will there be any savings administratively in AHS?
Are there savings? I thought it was to stabilize the revenue stream, that the fixed cost stayed the same, whether the child was sick for a week or not. So I need
Well,
to,
it's a question, so simply because there's a different way of record keeping.
Right, so I need to check, and I apologize, I need to check to see, I think they might still have to take attendance, and I can't remember why. So it does still
So federal
require
requirement.
attendance, don't quote me, let me find out, I can find out. The cost problem is much bigger for the state in terms of the total cost, because that will be more days and more hours. So I think that will eclipse the administrative savings if there are any, but I don't know that we can actually let go of attendance, which would be the main one, so let me check that.
If the director is still here, she might be able to explain what the.
you know, I'm just looking at the clock, and
That's a tiny question.
we're
Yeah.
into our vote on 17 and 42. We are not going to vote this bill out this afternoon, just to let you know. We'll have more time. We need to make a couple of amendments, obviously, a whole lot of amendments. If we're in agreement that we need to stage this so that we focus first on stabilizing the program, then looking at what seems to be a reasonable time frame for a reorganization of functions, what that would take. And then we need to make a couple of amendments relative to the parental leave in terms of making it very clear that in that 12-week period, it could be the,
Yeah.
and depending, you can have,
Makes delivery system.
you could have them, one parent take part of it and swap with the other, during that 12-week period. We didn't intend to lock it in that way, and that's been a source of concern. So we need to make that clear. And then the other is recognizing that we might have people that are combining leave and part-time work, and which would help obviously with that workforce stabilization.
So, are we gonna cut off, what are we doing for time? Because, are we gonna get some, I did have some questions.
We're going to come back to this tomorrow.
Okay,
We have to vote it up.
We have to vote it out tomorrow.
Can you make sure
And-
you just send it over with your questions?
And so if
I-
anybody's got questions between now and tomorrow, because I'm looking at the board, we've got to vote out S17, S42, we've got one S100, we have S137, we have S30 and S102.
We're gonna. be here
I think we've got to start looking at a greater period of time between when stuff comes out of policy, or if it has to go to both finance and appropriations, because this puts us in an impossible situation to, if it has to go to both committees, and we're both operating within this 1 week compressed timeline, it's really hard for finance, and then it means hardly anything
Well,
here.
The house
You
is,
have to clear one committee,
the house is in the same shape.
So, yes,
So they're gonna
Rich.
work till midnight tonight to get bills around the next.
Can you look at the red and the blue, George, because I think that'll help people
I
understand.
think people are gonna have to take the material and look at it offline, because we've got a huge timeline here, so some of this information that you might want, or questions you might have, you can do that
And we're happy
between
to-
today
If
and
you
tomorrow.
want to process that handout, and then we're happy to.
Yeah.
I feel like when she,
Yeah.
they get, because I do have some questions about presently in the system, people can be 100% and they're able to charge more per family and per, and is there any thought about that in this?
It's staying that same way, it's a per family share.
So the state would pay the $24,000 a kid, and the childcare provider can charge more.
You're talking about balanced billing. Do we want to revisit that policy? I don't know. I mean, this is a
It
free
is a
market.
concern, I've been getting
know
a lot
this
of
is-
emails about it recently.
You may want to see how because of this increase in the CCF payment, how it rolls out, and
Because that
what
may
the
mitigate.
experience of, particularly if the balance billing will happen on the higher income end, most likely. You would probably want to see how that's working once the new payment is up and operating for a while.
Okay, so I know that has come under question, and that is the extent to which, in Medicaid, you can't balance bill.
Right, that's right.
And so I,
And I would say for poor rural communities, it is an advantage that you can't balance it. Because what has happened now is communities with higher income families have been able to suck up all the labor force. And the poorer communities can't. I can think of in one instance in my county, I have one childcare facility that has 53 kids, and based upon attendance, it's about 135% of those kids. There's only one kid out of the whole 53, but it's 135% of the kids that attend are all within the system, and their parents have no ability to pay more. I have one other community that I've represented that they have very few kids that so they charge more,
Well,
and they're able to suck up the labor force.
well, I would hope that maybe with the infusion of an additional 120 million, we would make some substantial progress on making this group of kids more financially viable.
If you have a household income of 150,000, you have ability to go above the payment.
And there's no prohibition against doing that.
No,
Yes.
and there's nothing in our bill that precludes that from happening. I mean, if you're receiving benefits from the state, there's nothing that says you can't.
Right.
Go ahead.
And supplement.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna have to shut this off because we're through our 10-minute break. And now we're back and we're still behind. Thank you, Stephanie. And we're gonna, I would encourage everyone to look at the material. If questions come,
I'm just wondering, can we help you?
For the American Cancer Society, want to drop on daffodils during your break.
Ah.
Doesn't sound like you're having.
Daffodil
we're having no break.
Daffodil break.
Oh,
I didn't want to interrupt, it doesn't sound like you're having a break, so. Just want to leave them out. Thank you very much, I appreciate that.
Yes.
Have a nice day.
Vermont Cancer Society.
Yes, thank you very much. Enjoy your day.
In recognition of.
I didn't want to interrupt, have a nice day.
thank you so much.
They need a cup of water.
Well, we'll put it in the jacket.
Yeah.
They were expensive, but money was no object.
I need some water for that.
There we go.
Building water.
No, I
Quickly through.
All right.
I'm just
And well,
worried about
Yeah, I know.
One of my favorite committees.
I'm doing representing on the library.
Bye, Sarah.
Those are powerful librarians.
Well, yeah, Schwarzenegger learned
All right,
and
so.
Bush, don't mess with nurses or librarians.
Yeah.
Committee, we're going to go on to S17, and we took it up, and all we were waiting for is the amendment to come back. This is the sheriff reform, and you're going to see what we've added, and that had to do with we were very concerned about having a huge adverse impact on compensation to existing salaries. We were looking at a benchmark position and how to allow a certain amount of the administrative overhead to go, but capping that compensation, which was recommended to us. There was concern that we not have someone of, say, Senator Sheriff Marcoux experience be commensurate with somebody who's just brand new to the office. How we would do that, or within that band, some of that, it's got to be judgment, but we wanted to at least have 2 years' experience before they come to. So, Senator.
Madam Chair, just my memory is that at the end of the day, we thought Senator Sears might have a chance last night to look at this before he went in.
I don't.
I sent the version that didn't have the 2 years of version that came last night to him. But I didn't hear back from him at all.
I know he's out of commission today, but I'm just wondering.
I'm gonna move it out, and then if we have to do anything, but I think this was, the only thing was making sure that someone new to the office wasn't coming in and getting the same level, that uppermost compensation. So does the amendment, I think, reflect our discussion of yesterday, which is not more than 50% annual compensation. So that was our concern. This would, and the 50% annual was what's established in statute.
So the 50% is analogous to what we do in pay act for commissioners.
I'll second it.
I'll move to that.
I'll second.
So as Stephanie said, this is what we do analogous to what we do for commissioners.
No, this looks pretty fair.
Okay, and I have informed the chair of government operations of this amendment, to let you know. So we have a motion to accept the amendment by Senator Ruth and,
Senator Weston and Senator Stark.
okay, so let's
Oh, you
roll
put
on the
Bill's
amendment.
name on, if you want.
Well, he can move.
No, the clerk has a grudge against me.
Okay.
The clerk has more than that against.
Maybe.
I don't know if I can tell.
Lyons,
Yes.
Birch,
Yes.
Senator Stark,
Yes.
Westman, yes.
Yes. Okay, so S17, now we will take that up, and who wants to report? Who
No,
does?
that
Sheriff?
was the amendment.
Oh, sorry, I'm rushing.
Sorry.
I need a motion to move the bill favorably as amended. Senator,
And second.
second? Senator Stark?
No.
I can't
Okay,
say.
I'll second.
Oh,
No, I moved.
All right,
Lyons. Senator Ruth,
Yes.
Senator Lyons.
Yes.
Birch,
Yes.
Senator Stark,
Yes.
Westman, yes.
Kitchell, yes.
And the reporter.
Who has sheriffs and, oh, that would be Dick, but I'm not sure.
It won't be till Tuesday.
But he's not here.
And we can pass over it.
I thought we talked about him. It seemed like he said he was okay doing it.
Yeah, okay, we'll let him do the report. Can he
Let
be
the
the
record-
reporter even?
No, we just, the secretary is right here.
He's down on the street now, unless you want me to scribble it out.
So we know he's.
Let the record show that the Senate Secretary interrupted our voting.
Actually, we have another bill. Senator Sears, who's out for surgery,
Came in the day.
would be the reporter, but he isn't here to vote. He can still report the bill on behalf of the committee.
Yeah, we will, I'll contact him.
He was going to send you,
This is
this is S17.
We have another, okay. I will take it and
It goes on notice
I'll
tomorrow.
make sure I reach out to him. I'd have to get an oral confirmation.
He's in surgery today, so.
I'll get a confirmation.
So we've done two bills.
We need to do S42.
S42, we have another one. You want to just wait?
Okay, please.
S42,
Yes.
and that is the pension investment. And we had asked to have a couple of changes, one of which is to make reference to VPIC and the role that they're playing. And the other is under the fiduciary to make specific reference to the ADEC, which is the ding on the cash register. And then the last was, we did remove the 100,000 for the
assets.
for the asset, but we did keep the one position that is necessary even now, that would be no general fund cost. It would be apportioned across the 3 retirement funds. So we took the money out for the study, and then we added the language, expanded the language to include ADEC and the other.
Is the First Amendment is the only added, we added that second paragraph, is that all that we did for that? I assume all the other languages is already
Yes,
in.
number 1 is really recognizing the role. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, in the first instance of amendment, number 2, where it talks about the ADEC, that's the only language. we
Yeah,
changed by adding that paragraph.
Yes. And we did add the intent to build on the, the role of the pension commission, build on its effective efforts. That's in number 1 under intent. And then funding for the study would go in the budget. If we
This track,
determine, but it does allow the position to move forward.
what the treasurer was.
Yes, this is exactly what the treasurer said would work as well.
Does give a lot of flexibility.
Yeah, so do I have a motion to move the amendment favorably? Okay, Senator Bruce.
Second.
How'd you do it? You gotta divide that.
We could do the report.
So our motion on our amendment, call the roll?
Senator Ruth,
Yes.
Senator Lyons.
Yeah.
Senator Pritchett.
Yes.
Senator Starr.
Yes.
Westland's yes. Senator Kitchen.
Yes. Now a motion to move the bill favorably as amended, Senator
So
Pritchett, seconded by Senator Starr.
seconding everything.
He's so amenable.
It's just a little behind.
So unless it's further discussion, we'll call the roll.
Senator Brew.
Yes.
Lyons.
Yes.
Pritchett.
Yes.
Starr.
Yes.
Westland's yes. Kitchen.
Yes. And the reporter,
I have the treasurer's office, it doesn't matter.
that you
You're the reporter,
and you're the reporter.
not the, you know. The perch.
Now we were behind, now we're ahead. So maybe we can take our 10-minute break before we launch into S100.